AMD's new graphics card, the RX 7800 XT, is probably the best released graphics card this year for numerous reasons. And the first, of course, is the price. It's coming in at $499, but it's coming in $150 cheaper than when the RX 6800 XT was released, and it's doing so with now better performance, better efficiency, and in that time frame, you've had 3 years of central banks just going crazy on the money printers. So all this makes up for the RX 7800 XT, in my opinion, to be the best GPU launch this year in 2023. And the thing about the RX 6800 XT was that it was already one of AMD's best, if not their best, RDNA 2 card that they launched years ago. So this is, in my opinion, a big win, though we'll talk about the value proposition a little bit later in this video. Let's get on with the 1080p benchmarks first, and then the 1440p benchmarks and the 4K, where in today's system we tested with a 7950 X3D and 6200 MHz DDR5 memory from G-Skill on an ASRock Pro RS motherboard. Now, what we're seeing here at 1080p is the RX 7800 XT is a great card overall. It's going to give you those high refresh rates, especially since we're testing on all these games here, max and epic settings across 5 different games. So we got the new released Starfield, which actually comes in pretty much with a CPU hard cap, where it's CPU bottlenecked, a little around 110 FPS. And then if we go to Marvel Midnight Suns, this is a newer title, and it's working really well on this title with no ray tracing on. Moving through a Fortnite epic settings, game looks really good and it's giving out really good performance. Then we're on to Cyberpunk 2077, and then also lastly Hogwarts Legacy. Though let's show you guys more of these benchmarks right after today's video sponsor. If you want to get Windows 10 Pro activated for as little as $15 or Windows 11 Pro for as little as $21, then today's video sponsor SCD Keys has you covered. Use that coupon code BFTYC for a big 30% discount, and the link in the description below. Then moving on to 1440p, here's where things get even better for the RX 7800 XT, where the scaling is really good from 1080p across all these 5 titles, with the exception of Starfield, where that sort of hurts more the higher end cards. As we mentioned before, that CPU cap around 110 FPS there, that sort of favors now the RX 7900 XT X to now stretch its legs a little bit more. But moving on now to 4K is where things do start to shake up a little bit. And I'm looking mainly at the RTX 3080 here, where that kind of starts to stand out a little bit more than it did at 1440p and 1080p. But the RX 7800 XT does a phenomenal job here, and these are at max settings on all these games. So I just pretty much max the settings just to give you guys a GPU comparison. But if you're willing to drop some of these settings, you'll be able to play games fine, especially RPGs, on pretty much any title at 60 FPS on this GPU with no upscaling at 4K. And if you want to go to competitive games, I do suggest playing at 1440p, because you'll get a lot better of a competitive experience at that resolution. So I think you've got all bases covered when you just want to play games with no fancy ray tracing settings on. But we'll show you guys the ray tracing results here before we move on to that conclusion, because here's where the RX 7800 XT, just like the 7900 XTX, does show that NVIDIA does have the ray tracing advantage here, especially as we move towards these higher end GPUs, but the 7800 XT still does a great job here. Now moving on with the temperatures for the RX 7800 XT, this is the reference model that we got sent here from AMD, and we see here that the temperatures and the noise are mediocre. And basically, if you're using this card, I would recommend using the default out of the profile settings. I wouldn't really mess with the fan speeds as we're doing here. You're either going to get higher noise, much higher noise, lower temperatures, or just higher temperatures going into a pretty dangerous zone. Though if you are going to go with the reference model, I would recommend, just like all new GPUs being released on the higher end, undervolting. That'll give you a drop in temperatures as well as a drop in power consumption. Though speaking of power consumption, here is some good news for the RDNA 3 7800 XT in particular. It does give out better efficiency than the 6800 XT, which it's essentially replacing, and you get slightly more performance at a lower price point. So this is a really good thing about this card, is that it's sort of the cream of the crop, I feel, out of the cards that I've tested in the RDNA 3 zone. So these numbers show that, but looking at the card in terms of its actual physical attributes. Here it's coming under 30 centimeters, so it's going to fit in pretty much all mini ITX cases. At the back, you've got those DisplayPort 2s, as well as a HDMI 2.1, and on top of that, you've got the AV1 encoding. So if you want to start doing more efficient streams, especially if your internet is bad, I think this is the most important point. If you've got pretty crap internet, then you can take advantage of that AV1 encoder, and that'll do a great job of optimizing your efficiency for your live streams. However, in terms of the card itself, it's a 2.5 slot design, comes in with 2 fans, and so AMD's reference models do look quite nice, and this one does require 2 8-pin PCIe standard connections. And also we did test this on separate connections as well as actually a pigtail connection. We had no problems on both. So don't be too afraid if you've got a good power supply, but you only have a split 2 8-pin PCIe power connectors to give it a go. It should work fine. So with all that data out of the way, it is now time for a conclusion with this card. Now, I've straight away got to apologize to you guys. I am late with this review, but that's because the card got sent to Australia and it's actually still in Australia. So I had to spend a lot of time with my co-pilot Yusuf here at Tech Yes City, and he was doing the results on the same games, same benchmarks, same settings, and then testing out all the other things with this card. Then I had to validate those settings just to make sure they were right for this review. So you may notice the B-roll is looking a little bit different than the usual Tech Yes setup for the videos. But now it's time to look at the RX 7800 XT, what it's delivering and its price point, and who is it going to be for. And I think this card is going to be for a lot of people who want high-end performance, who want that sort of higher VRAM buffer with 16 gigabytes being quite large, and they don't want to spend too much money. So they're looking for that value card that still offers that high-end feel. And this card is certainly going to deliver that, especially for just raw gaming, where I think in 2023, that is still the sweet spot for most gamers, and especially at 1440p, this card is going to scale really well with a lot of monitors. So it's a great option all round, and I can't really fault it in too many areas. Though looking at those temperatures and noise, I would say if you can, go for a custom model with say 3 fans if your case can fit it especially. I do think you'll get lower temperatures and lower noise, which will be a benefit for you especially in the long run, as well as the short term being able to game fine. However, this card right here, it does a great job. The performance is really impressive, especially at that $499 price point. So overall though, I've been pretty positive this year with the GPUs, considering I just take a lot of the times into account inflation, which is just everywhere around me. I mean, for instance, the other week I went to Tokyo Sky Tree with my boy and the misso, and we were just shocked at the prices compared to a few years ago, and this is for the exact same experience just going up to Sky Tree. So prices are just risen for everything, but in this case, except for a 7800 XT, the prices have dropped, and in that time, all that inflation just makes me, I guess, overly positive about this card. And so maybe that's where I differ to other reviewers. They might be saying, hey, it's a decent card or it's mediocre, but I think this card is really good value. In fact, I think it's the best value gaming card that's been released in 2023. So if this is the card that you've been waiting for, especially if you've been looking at sales on 6800 XTs for around the same price, I think the 7800 XT is going to be a better option for you, as well as it being at that MSRP of $499. It's pretty much a no-brainer if you've got this amount of money that you want to spend on a graphics card. So really good props here for AMD for making this one happen. The RX 7700 XT, I haven't got my hands on that. I will take a look at that when I'm back in Australia. That one doesn't make a whole lot of sense, even when I look at it from the spec sheet point versus the RX 7800 XT. So you would want to get your hands on an RX 7800 XT over the RX 7700 XT, because it's just going to give you, from what I'm seeing, much better performance for a slightly higher price. And comparing it to the RTX 4070, of course, you've got the NVIDIA suite there. It's $100 more expensive. You got your DLSS 3, DLSS 2, but AMD are bringing their FSR 3. We're going to test that out when that comes out over a few different games, see what that can deliver. But what we got here with this card is a card that just plays games at 1440p very well. If you've got a 4K monitor and you like budgeting your settings, you're going to get a great experience there too. So overall, I'm just actually really impressed with this GPU. Of course, it's not as efficient as the NVIDIA cards on their RTX 4000 series, but it's doing a great job for its price point. So that's the thing that makes the most difference. And I think the power consumption isn't worlds of a difference. I mean, if they were, then I'd be pointing that out. But the power consumption is in favor of NVIDIA, but you can undervolt it to get some better results on this card. It does respond quite well to undervolting. And so with that aside, the RX 7800 XT is a overwhelming recommended buy here at Tech Yes City. And if you guys have any questions or comments about this GPU, then be sure to drop them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Do apologize for being slow with the review, but hopefully it was worth it. Though do let us know in the comment section below. I do read the comments and I love it when you guys ask questions too. A lot of people will help you out in the comments if I don't answer directly. But this question of the day we got here is going to tie into another part of this review, which is talking about the used market. So this question is from Noel Bahamut 4607, and they ask, where's that store with the RX 7900 XT? Would love to check it out when I visit next month. Maybe they might still have some worthwhile deals. So when we were in Tokyo a few weeks ago, we found a 7900 XT. If you had your tourist passport, you get it for, I think, around 600 USD for a 7900 XT. And that's a really good price for that GPU. And so I'll put the store where its location is on a map here for you. So if you're in Akihabara or Tokyo, you can get this card, or at least go around all the stores and try and sift out a really good bargain on the used market. Now, also on that note of the used market, we did see an RTX, actually purchased an RTX 3070 here for a little over 200 USD. So the used market right now is absolutely popping off, like at least in Japan. I've got to get back to Australia, check out the used market there too. But if you don't mind going used, even on these newer GPUs, 7900 XT for example, then there's definitely some value to be extracted there too. So don't overlook the used market. It's got some tremendously good deals out there at the moment. I feel like the RX 7800 XT is going to make some really good deals come out for the RX 6800 XT and RX 6700 XT. And so you've got a great amount of options there if you want to find a bargain right now. Not just now with the new market, with this RX 7800 XT bringing the value, but also with the used market. The deals are just piling up. You've got a lot of choices, so it's a great time, at least finally, for the GPU market, especially if we compare that to a few years ago. It was an absolute headache if you're looking for a GPU at a decent price. But things have reversed now, and I'm glad to say that this GPU is one of the better GPUs out there for you to consider. Anyhow, if you stayed this far and you're enjoying that content, be sure to hit the sub button, ring the bell to get the content as soon as it drops, and I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.